Transclusion is one of the most confusing concepts in AngularJS, even the word transclusion itself. In this video, we are going to learn about what exactly is transclusion in AngularJS and how can we achieve it using a couple of samples. This video is just an introduction to transclusion. In our coming up videos, we are going to see transclusion in much more detail, including transclusion scope and so on. But for now, we will be just having some understanding about transclusion for the first time as part of AngularJS tutorial itself. Before we jump onto transclusion, we need to have some understanding on the directive and the template and how they are really related to each other. So this is not really about transclusion, but it is about directive and template in general. Imagine I have my markup in this manner. So this is my view which is associated with a controller called sample, and this is a message from the controller, and now I have another div with message. So what exactly is this message? That's nothing but our directive. So in this case, I'm defining a directive called message, and I'm using the same message right here. So which means for this element div, we are going to have our directive to be applied. So what is it going to apply? In fact, it is going to apply this template. So you can see I can have my own msg.html, which can have this markup, and at runtime, this particular markup will be automatically injected into this template because we are using this directive. So we are saying that this div works with this directive, and this directive actually gets the markup from this template and injects that as part of this div, and finally the output will be something like this. So you are going to see the controller, some message from the controller, and this particular div being transformed in this fashion. So which means you are specifying just the div in your markup, but as this is being decorated with the directive, the content of the div will also have this particular template, and that template will be carried further down here. So in that way, we are having our directive to be including the content from some other template. So that particular template is being associated with the directive, and the directive is being applied to our element, and finally our element is going to get that template directly as part of the content of that element. So this is how usually the directives and the templates work. But let us go to another case. Now we are talking about not just directive and template, but also a bit about content. So when I say content, the content relative to directive. So very similarly, now you can see I have another controller being, the same controller sample being applied for this particular markup, and we have all the rest of the scenarios. And you can also see I still have the same directive called message which is being applied. And you can see I also have my own template which is pretty similar to what we have seen in the previous slide, and that is also supposed to be injected, and you can see we have the output as this one. So what is the difference between this versus the previous one? When you see this, you can see we are actually having this particular content to be replaced with this content whenever it is rendered. So from the markup perspective, you are going to say this, but once it has been executed and transformed by AngularJS framework, you are going to see the output as this one. And where is our template? So you can see this template is actually injected here, but there is one point missing in this entire diagram, that is this part. We do not see this one anywhere whenever you go in this fashion. So what happened to this one? So if you really consider this, this is considered as the content of this directive related markup. So which means I have an element called div which is applying a directive called message, and whenever we are applying the message, it knows that it needs to pick up this particular template and inject that template right here, and that is what it did. And what it really did was it replaced the content of our particular element with this template, and thus we are overwriting whatever the content it has with this template. So in fact, we are actually missing this entire content. Whatever you put in here will be automatically lost, will be replaced with this template. But that is not what we really want in general. So in my opinion, In my case, I really want this particular div to be having the message to be applied, that is the directive to be applied. That actually brings down this guy, and inside this one I would like to have this is inner message to be placed somewhere in this fashion, so that I am going to see div message and the template, and this content to be somewhere injected right in here within the template. That is nothing but transclusion. So which means you would like to have the content from some other template to be injected into another template and finally to be rendered. That is nothing but the transclusion. So we are going to see that in the next slide. So let us just try to understand what exactly is transclusion here. Again, the same story. We have the controller sample with some message from the controller, and we have the div which is having our message as the directive being applied, and that particular directive is having the template in this fashion. And now this particular template is going to be injected right in here. However, as part of the output, now you can see I have the template. This is from message template. This is the message I have in place, and you can also see that this is inner message is also going to be finally made available as part of the output. So the only difference is that we are not replacing this content, but instead we are actually extracting this content out of this and placing right inside the template at one particular location, and that is what is transclusion. So how did I achieve it? So you can see this is our normal markup, that is our element which is being transformed in this fashion, and we have also our template which is also transformed in this fashion, but the only difference is that we have the content, and that particular content is also made available here because we have transclude equal to true. That is the first attribute which we need to be taking care of. So whenever we would like to have the content to be included in the output, the first thing is that we need to have our directive to be decorated with transclude option with true. So that's the first thing. The next thing is that whenever we say transclude, the meaning of transclude is please extract the content and fix somewhere or inject somewhere. So whenever you find the word transclude, just try to understand it is going to be just extract the content of an existing markup element and inject that somewhere else. So where do we inject it? That is where this ng-transclude is meant for. So I am saying that whenever it is trying to extract the content, that extracted content should be actually massaged by AngularJS framework, get the markup out of it, I mean the DOM out of it, and inject that wherever this ng-transclude attribute is actually applied. So in this case, AngularJS, what it does is it actually brings this is inner message. So that is the message which will be extracted and finally injected right here. And that is exactly what you are saying here. So this div is nothing but this div, and this message is injected right in this div which actually gets in this format. So even though you are working with the same template, this template is actually getting the information or content from some other template. That is nothing but transclusion. So now you can see we have all of these three working together to actually get our transclusion to be working. So you have transclude equal to true, you have to use ng-transclude, that is you are specifying where the extracted content needs to be injected. So that is what is this specification for. So transclude equal to true, ng-transclude specifies where the content needs to be injected, and finally during the rendering process this content is going to be injected right at the same location where ng-transclude is supposed to be mentioned, and all of this process will be taken care if and only if you specify transclude equal to true, and this whole process together is nothing but transclusion. So in general, transclusion means include content of a template into another. So we are actually getting the content of a particular template here. This is another view or template. We are getting or extracting that particular content out of it and injecting it into another template. So that is nothing but transclusion. So we are going to see how we can achieve this as part of examples. Not just ng-transclude, we are going to go through a couple more examples as well. So let me open my HTML here and also my JavaScript. So this is just a simple controller called sample, and you can see I have the sample right here with no content literally. So let me modify my my particular ng app with a directive. So which means I'm including a new directive called message1. So I need to have a function to define my directive, and in this case all I'm going to say is my directive needs to have the content or the template to be used from message1.html. So I do not have message1.html, so let me create it. So I'm going to call this one as message1.html. So that this is actually the template we are talking about. So in this case all I'm going to say is I'm going to say something like this is from message1 template. So this is a straightforward message which needs to be injected right here. So I need to modify my controller related markup. So first of all, I just would like to provide a simple static message that this is from the controller. So nothing much special here. And once done with the controller message, I would like to have the message1 related directive. So this is message1 directive here. I just wanted to mention that. So this is also static message. You can put whatever the message you want. This is just a plain text, and I would like to say instance1 for now. And this is our markup, and I am saying that please apply my template called message1. So this message1 is nothing but the one related to this one. So this div gets applied, or this directive message1 gets applied on this div, and this directive message1 in turn works with this template to get all the content and finally inject or write inside this div. So let us see if this is working fine. So I go back here and I'm going to say localhost A01, and now you can see this is controller. This is what we have in place from the controller message, and you can see message1 instance1 is a static text. However, this information is injected by actually extracting that one from the template and finally making it available right inside the markup of the main application. So once you open your developer tools, and if we go in here and just select this guy, you are going to see inside the div message you actually have your template automatically injected. So this is what I was talking about. So inside the div you have this template injected, so which is fine. No transclusion happened here. It is just the normal way on how the directive and the template will be working together. So the next thing is that let me take this one to the next level. So I would like to say instance2 just for our understanding, and probably I would need a break tag here so that we will see some difference and separation from the previous one. So this is also message1, and I would like to say this is inner message. So my expectation is that I would like to have this is inner message also to be shown as part of the rendering. So let me go back here and press F5, and you can see there is no difference. So I don't see this particular content at all. So that is completely out of the story. Even though I specified that inside the message1 related div, at runtime, if you see the output, you can see that whole message, that is the inner message, has been replaced with just the template. So that is gone, and now I need to have that one to be brought in and injected inside another template. So that is what we are going to work with. So in order to get that one to work, I would like to introduce another template, so another directive and another template for. So let me create another directive called message2, and I would like to have this one to be working with message2 HTML. And let me duplicate this file, and I call this one as message2, and this is message2, and I just would like to have this one to be modified to message2 template, and I would like to have a bit more like, and following is inner content, and I am going to say something like div. As mentioned in my presentation, all I had to do is just transclude. That's it. So whenever you specify this, and whenever you specify this message2 in our JavaScript to be actually having transclude equals true. This is important as mentioned in my presentation. So you need to specify transclude equal to true, which essentially tries to get the content from our message to. So this is the content. So this whole content is going to be actually injected right inside this one. So let us see if everything is working fine. So just press F5 and now you can see I have the third one, that is nothing but our new directive, which is having the message from the template, and on top of that it is also including the message or the content from some other template. So this is exactly what is called as a transclusion. So if you go in here and if you select this guy, you are going to see the div message to, which is nothing but our main markup. So if you switch back, you can see div message to is our main markup. Inside this I am going to see the template. Inside this you are going to see further content. So you can see the div message to, I have the div which is a template. Inside the template I have ng-transclude, which actually gets this is inner message. And of course if you really want to, you can still style it as really something like style equal to color blue or something, so that it actually really stands out from what it has really fetched from. So this is one way of actually implementing transclusion as part of your application, but there are several other ways in order to implement that. We are also going to see a couple of other ways. So let us go back to my AngularJS here. So let me create another directive, and in this case I would like to call this one as message3, and even this message3 I would like to have this one to be working with some other template called message HTML and transclude true obviously. And in this case I would like to have the transclusion to be happening using link function. So this transclusion is actually happening through ng-include, so which we already demonstrated. Sorry, not ng-include, ng-transclude. So in this case we would like to use a linking function. So if you are not familiar with linking function, please actually go through my previous video on compile, link and so on. So you have a couple of videos on there. So that is pretty much important before you understand this link function. So now I go to link. I can specify my own function for the link, and as you know the link will be having the scope, instance element, instance attributes and controller, and the new one, this is important, the transclude. So there exists a transclude option available for the linking function, which usually will be having a function definition at runtime. So you can use this particular function in order to have the content to be extracted or say transcluded. So this whole part can be extracted and massaged by AngularJS framework just by using transclude function, which has been sent to this one. So you can use any variable here, but it is a tradition that we use transclude. So now we need to inject the transcluded content. So for example, if I say this variable content equal to transclude, so which means I'm saying that please get the extracted content from my main markup, something like this. So this whole part will be actually retrieved by this function and placed into the variable called content, and now we need to inject it somewhere. So how do I inject it? So that is where I am going to work with message3.html. So let me actually duplicate this guy and call it as message3, and let me remove 1 and 2 from our editor, and I am solely working on message3. So in this case, as you know, I do not really want to work with ng-include anymore, so I just delete it. But instead I'm going to say some identification for this panel called inner panel. You can specify whatever the panel you would like to say here. So this panel, or say this entire template, is actually available right from iElement. So this iElement is a jQuery object which actually gets hold of this entire one. So I can use the jQuery related find in order to work with, sorry, this is iElement. So this is a jQuery object. I can say iElement dot find, and I'm going to say please find this particular element within the markup. So this iElement is nothing but this whole DOM, and in this DOM I am actually finding this element, and I would like to inject as part of this element. So I found this element using find. So once I found it, all I have to say is append my content. So this content is nothing but this particular variable. So whatever the extracted content we have as part of this transclude will be assigned to this variable, and the same variable related content is being appended or injected as part of this div available in that particular markup template. So let us see if this is working fine. And of course I am working with message 3. So let me modify my markup with message 3 related stuff. So I'm going to say message 3 instance 1, and I need to apply message 3 for this guy. And I go back and just say f file. And now you can see it is still working here. And if you actually go with this, you have to see inner panel right here. That is the inner panel which we have specified as part of the template, and inside the template we are trying to inject it. So that is another way. And there is one more way, not just one more way, there are several ways, and we actually seen a couple of ways. We have seen transclude, that is ng-transclude option using linking function, and of course there is one more way called using the directive controller itself. So again, if you are not familiar with directive controller, you need to watch my compiling and link related video. So let me create another directive, and I am going to call this one as message 4. And this is also going to be a function, obviously, in order to create my directive. And as part of this one, I am going to return a template URL. I can specify, in this case I would like to reuse my template so that I can work with the same template and the same div called inner panel. So I can just use the same template here. So if not, you can create your own new template, but in this case I think this will be good enough for me. So I'm going to use this transclude equal to true, obviously. So this is essential. And instead of providing a linking function, I can actually specify the directive controller right here. So that is going to be another function. And this function can have the defaults like $scope, $element, $attributes, and obviously $transclude. So just like all these particular values being passed by AngularJS, even here all of these will be automatically filled by AngularJS. Just like this transclude being a function, this transclude is also a function. So the same content whatever I have written earlier will also be working here. So now you can see, except that here I am using $transclude variable instead of transclude variable. So in this case, this has to work with no issues. And you can see I have to use $element but not iElement here, so because that is the one I am using. So that is a variable. So this is just the variable, you don't need dollars here. So this is just another way of using your transclusion. The only difference is that you are actually transcluding at the level of controller instead of at the level of linking. So this is just another way. So let me create another instance out of the same message, and I call this one as something like message 4, and it has to apply my message 4 here. So probably just some difference, and probably some difference, and probably some difference here also. So just for our understanding. So this should work fine with no issues. So let me press F5. This one having some problem. So let me refresh this again, and now you should be able to see everything working fine. So we have message 2 working in its own way, 3 and even 4 working in its own way. So these are just various ways on how we can really have our particular transclusion to be working. But I also would like to make a note that we can create our own ng-transclude kind of a function, attribute. And in fact, whenever I say attribute, a directive. So if you go back to my previous one, that is message 2, you can see ng-transclude is a particular directive provided by AngularJS in order to have the transcluded content to be injected as part of our existing element called div. Previously, this ng-transclude was not available. We had to write our own ng-transclude kind of a directive on our own, and that is still possible even now. So I would like to take advantage of this one by creating our own ng-transclude kind of a directive, and I would like to call that one as my-transclude in my case. So let me go with another one. So we have the message for let me create something like a new directive. So I would like to call something like using my own transclude directive. Okay, so first of all, I would like to have my own directive to be created, that is message 5 in this case, and I would like to have this one to be a function, obviously. And as part of this message 5, I would like to return something like template URL. I would like to create a message 5.html, and obviously I need to have transclude equal to true. Okay, so I defined a new directive altogether. So there is no controller, no linking function, anything else. We are going to just work with only my own directive called a transclude kind of a directive. So if you do not want this, you can just go with our previous one, which is our ng-transclude. So I just wanted to show on how this ng-transclude was implemented as part of AngularJS framework by creating our own directive called my ng-transclude directive, whatever you call it as. So this is my new directive, and it is going to work with message 5.html, which I don't think I have it. I need to create that. But prior to that, I need to create my own ng-transclude directive. Called my-transclude. So this is going to be the new directive which I am going to create, and which is supposed to work as simple as this ng-transclude. So I am going to say ng directive, and as we know, we need to create my-transclude. So I am going to say my-transclude function. So you can say I can just use -t here as because I have a capital letter here. Now I am going to say return just the linking function, which actually will get the scope, element, attribute, the controller, and transclude. Obviously that's the last one. So this is exactly the same as this guy. So if you really want to, you can just use the same thing right here. So it is the same thing as we used earlier. And now all I'm going to say is I-element dot append just the content directly from the transclude function. So I can just use transclude here. So earlier I used it to have this function to be executed and put into a variable. Now I'm just using the same content here. I just wanted to skip the variable there. So this is my simplest my-transclude directive, which can be applied as simply as ng-transclude. So let me have message 2. I just wanted to duplicate this, and I call this one as message 5. So in this case, the message 5, so let me open this. So okay, I would like to call this one as message 5. So this is from message 5, and this is the following inner content, but instead of ng-transclude, I would like to call this one as my-transclude, because my-transclude itself says that it is a directive on its own, and it knows that while linking, it has to really transclude the content from some other template and inject right into the current template. So this is just another way of doing things. And of course I need to have my particular HTML to be having the latest one. So I'm going to call this one as message 5, because that is my new directive, and I'm going to call this one as message 5 here. And let me refresh this, and if everything works fine, we are supposed to have message 5 also to be working here. And the moment you select this and click on this, you are going to see that you are using my-transclude as similar to as ng-transclude. So you can say I have ng-transclude here. In the same fashion, you are using my-transclude. So this is pretty much about the transclusion in general. However, we have not seen on how to pass data from the parent controller or from the parent directive or from the parent to the transclude, and how the really scope works in the transclude and so on. So we are going to cover all of those in the coming up video.